Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It's really exciting to be here with you for this ISNTD Connect series. And I'll be discussing with you an introduction to the CureID platform, including its utility and applicability in the NTD, as well as the COVID space. Just a little housekeeping. I have no financial disclaimers to report. This presentation will contain significant discussion of the use of medical products for diseases and conditions that are not included in the FDA-approved drug labeling. The discussion should not be construed as promoting unapproved uses of approved drugs, or that the data should be used for anything more than hypothesis generation. It's also important to note the intent and limitations of the data. CureID is not intended to be used by pharmaceutical companies or manufacturers to advertise or promote unapproved uses of approved drugs. Individual case reports are insufficient to establish the safety or effectiveness of a new use of an approved product, and inclusion of data in the CureID repository does not indicate that FDA, NIH, or other CureID partners endorse its validity, reliability, or usefulness in making individual patient treatment decisions. So with that, here's a brief outline of what we'll be discussing. First will be a background of what exactly drug repurposing is, followed by a demonstration of the CureID platform, a discussion of the data that's collected and commonly asked questions, its potential applicability for COVID-19, and then a brief discussion of the launch of a public-private partnership, the Cure Drug Repurposing Collaboratory. So what is drug repurposing? While there are many different definitions, the one we'll use today is that drug repurposing is the identification of potential novel uses of existing drugs. There is a significant lack of adequate approved treatments for many infectious diseases, which Nathalie will detail more in the future. However, the clinical experience on how existing drugs are being used can be collected, and that would enable promising candidates, drug combinations, and treatment regimens to be quickly identified and then inform clinical trials that could be conducted to investigate these potential new uses. So what kinds of new information can be gleaned from looking at existing drugs? Well, the most obvious is finding new ways of treating diseases, so new diseases or indications. We could also look at drug repurposing as looking at new combinations of drugs that might be helpful, new dosing regimens or durations of therapy, as well as new populations that might benefit from existing treatments. But importantly, unapproved uses that do not work or are harmful to patients must also be identified so that their use can be dissuaded. Based upon this background, we developed a platform to try to capture novel uses of existing drugs directly from healthcare providers around the world. The platform, CureID, is an internet-based repository that was developed as a collaboration between FDA and NIH, as well as with the support of IDSA, WHO, DNDi, and others. And it gives the global clinical community the opportunity to share novel uses of existing drugs for patients with difficult to treat infectious diseases through a website, a smartphone, or other mobile device. The goal of the platform is threefold. The first is to enhance the understanding of new uses of approved medical products. Second is to facilitate clinical trials and drug development. And third is to serve as a resource for physicians to share information where no FDA-approved product, which has been proven to be safe and effective, exists for a new use. I encourage you all to follow along as I go through a quick demonstration of the app and website. You can visit the website at cure.ncats.io or download the app from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store as CureID, where it's freely available as both. There's a quick registration process that takes less than 30 seconds. You just need to enter an email and password, and then your qualifications, and certify that you're a licensed healthcare professional. While the app is applicable to a number of infectious diseases, it seems particularly well suited to a few broad categories. The first would be neglected infectious or tropical diseases. Second, antimicrobial resistant organisms. And third, emerging threats, which the current COVID pandemic is highlighting. In all of these groups, we're looking at those diseases specifically which have insufficient or no approved therapies. We've identified a couple of pilot priority diseases where we're specifically trying to generate activity in communities. And these include COVID-19, mycetoma, atypical or non-tuberculous mycobacteria, drug-resistant gonorrhea, rare and resistant fungal infections, particularly in transplant patients, as well as multi-drug resistant gram-negative organisms. The platform includes the 4 major features that follow. First is the Explore function, where users can view reported case reports, both from individual clinicians as well as published literature. And they can view these cases individually in detail as they were entered, as well as in aggregate, in addition to discussion forum, posts, and clinical trials. The Create feature allows you to enter your own case report or discussion post using an easy electronic or mobile platform. One can comment by joining the conversation on case reports or discussion posts from other users. And a news feed allows the users to stay up to date on the latest infectious disease news, including journal articles, events, and submissions to CureID. I'll now run through some screenshots of the app itself so you can see the different features in action. So the first part is the Explore feature, which allows you to see the case reports, discussion posts, and clinical trials organized by disease. You can search by disease, and then if you click on a particular disease and case report number, then you can see those cases that were reported for that particular disease organized by the number of cases where a particular drug was used. So as an example, here we look at the case reports for COVID-19, which currently are approximately 160 cases. And I can see that there were 10 cases where tocilizumab was used. If I click on that, then I can see the information segregated by whether the drug was used as monotherapy or in a combination and which combinations it was used in, and then sorted by outcome. So here I can see for tocilizumab that there was 1 case where the patient deteriorated. And if I want to see the full details of that report, then I can click on that information and see both a summary level view as well as viewing the entire case report. The Explore feature also includes the discussion posts where questions can be asked of the global clinical community and responses garnered from both experts as well as clinicians around the world. One can also explore clinical trials. This pulls information directly from clinicaltrials.gov, where it is curated by a physician and focuses on drug treatments for these particular diseases. The Create feature allows a user to submit either a case report or a discussion post. The case report form is a very simple, very focused case report that allows a user to enter all of the pertinent information about their patient in just a few moments. It's collected in an entirely de-identified fashion so that patient's privacy is protected. There are 8 questions which we include in what we call the quick submit, which are the required questions. And these outline the disease that the patient suffered from, the drugs that were used, why the drugs were being used in a new way, why they were being repurposed, how the diagnosis of the disease was made, whether it was laboratory confirmed or not. Then the outcome of treatment, whether any adverse events occurred, and whether the clinician would like a reminder to update the case at a later date. Then the clinician has the option to either submit the case with that limited but useful information, or to fill in additional details, such as the patient demographics, how the outcome was determined, whether the organism was resistant, and other details. And we have found that the quick submit case can be entered in just a moment or so, and a few minutes to enter the full case report form. But we have worked tirelessly to make sure that the case report form is easy for clinicians to use. It was developed by clinicians and public health specialists for clinicians. And so it follows the typical pattern that a clinician is used to for a case report form, and provides the information, captures it in a systematic fashion using controlled terminology so that it can be readily aggregated together, and presents the information publicly to all other users so that they can learn from those experiences. But again, with the information being completely de-identified, to protect the patient's privacy. And a user has the option to anonymize a particular case submission or discussion post if they so choose. So that is an option as well. Here's an example of the COVID-19 case report I showed previously using tocilizumab, in which the patient deteriorated. So you can see this is the quick submit information with the summary level overview, that the patient was a PCR lab confirmed, as well as imaging confirmed case of COVID, and suffered from a stroke. Then you can see the information, so the patient characteristics, comorbidities and co-infections, how the diagnosis was made, details of the treatment, including the dose, duration, route, and route of administration, and how each drug was used in a new way, as well as its treatment setting, which would be a proxy for severity, and then the outcome, both including the method for outcome determination, as well as when the outcome was assessed and whether the patient relapsed. Additional users can then comment on a case report or a discussion post, and so can engage with the original author of the post to ask clarifying questions or seek additional information. The discussion post is the other way that a user can contribute information. This is a much more free text form. All you do is select a disease and then enter a free text title and body of a paragraph or question. And this allows users to then engage with healthcare providers all over the world. And this has been a very active part of the app. The newsfeed allows users to sort of stay up to date with the latest and greatest that's going on. So here we can see a comment that was posted by a physician about a case report, in fact, of ivermectin being tried for COVID-19, as well as a journal article on hydroxychloroquine that was shared. So how exactly does the platform work? Just to walk you through the steps. A healthcare provider submits a case report form via the app or the website using completely de-identified information and largely standardized terminology. Once that case is posted, it's rapidly reviewed, typically within 12 hours, by CureID moderators with the goal of ensuring quality and accuracy. The moderators may contact the user for additional details or clarification, and in the unlikely event that the case fails to meet the terms of service and the disclaimers that the user agreed to, it could be removed. The data from the case reports is then aggregated to show the total number of cases using each drug as either monotherapy or specific combination therapies, and then is further broken down by treatment outcome. And this allows users to see sort of the full breadth of information that's available in both the published literature as well as clinician submitted cases, and to see, how different drugs compare to each other or combinations compare to each other in terms of which might look the most promising. Now, again, this information is solely for the purpose of hypothesis generation. It's in no way confirmatory evidence, but it can potentially, with sufficient numbers of cases, so please submit your cases, it can potentially be a signal or hypothesis generator. And then users also have the option to download the entire de-identified data set to conduct their own research. So the information is all open source and readily available. The data curation is an important component. The data is contributed by a healthcare provider and submitted through the case report form, where it is then reviewed by a CureID curator. And If there are questions, they can ask the data contributor to confirm information, provide additional details, or clarify statements that were made, and then the curated information is visible on the website. So we are often asked who can participate. The app is open to licensed healthcare professionals around the world. It is a global platform, and the goal is for them to be able to report their clinical experiences. And healthcare professionals here we define to include physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, nurses, as well as pharmacists. So other key features of the platform: it is free, it is an open source and globally accessible platform. And I should note that it also includes offline capabilities for access in resource limited settings. So for example, a user can download some of the information to their phone, and they can also save a case report and then upload it once they have internet access at a later point in time. As I said before, the information is all collected in a de-identified manner, is curated, and the author has the ability to anonymize individual submissions, with the hope in particular that this will encourage the submission of treatments that were unsuccessful as well as those that were successful, to try to help counterbalance the positive publication bias that often exists. With that, we have an emphasis on both successful and unsuccessful treatments, because what doesn't work is as important as what does. And we also emphasize inclusion of adverse events to try to understand the safety implications of these drugs when they are used in new ways and in new populations. And our goal is that this should be an opportunity to connect clinicians around the world and provide a sort of one-stop shop of information where they're able to access as much high-quality data as exists as possible in the absence of established safety and efficacy of products for these diseases. There are a variety of potential uses of the platform, which have frankly been recently demonstrated because of the COVID pandemic. So these include serving as a rapid communication platform for healthcare providers during an outbreak and providing for systematic case sharing discussions in the latest literature. Again, serving as this important step between the collection of unstructured anecdotal reports, as is currently published in the literature, and the robust randomized trials that would ultimately be required for drug approval. This could be an important bridge between those two. It also enables the exchange of opinions from global communities of experts and with those with very different treatment experiences. And of course, our hope is that it will help to identify potential new uses for existing drugs while limiting the unhelpful or harmful uses. A review of a few numbers. To date, we have 325 infectious diseases included, with nearly 1,600 case reports, more than 5,600 activated users, and nearly 19,000 clinical trials included. We've made some important updates to the CureID platform in support of the COVID response. This includes, these updates include facilitating clinician reporting of their real-world experiences treating COVID-19 patients whenever those patients are unable to be enrolled in a clinical trial. And this includes promotion as of last week by FDA, NIH, CDC, IDSA, and other partners, all coming out to suggest that clinicians report their experiences with COVID-19 patients to this platform. It also includes an updated case report form that has been tailored to COVID-19 with data fields that have been harmonized with other real-world data and clinical trial platforms to try to enable multiple sources of data to be aggregated together and used to inform ongoing trials. It enables the data to be entered with adverse events automatically shared with FDA's MedWatch adverse reporting system, so that a clinician doesn't have to submit 2 different case report forms to share a case where there was an adverse event that occurred. But it should be noted that voluntary submission of cases to CureID is not a substitute for filing information with regulatory and public health authorities where that may be required. We are now updating the clinical trials for COVID nearly daily, and it includes about 750 clinical trials of COVID-19 treatments, including vaccines, drugs, and biologics. We also update the app daily with COVID-19 journal articles, news articles, and events. And to date, we have almost 160 detailed case reports of COVID-19 treatments that have been either extracted from the published literature or entered by clinician users, with the data displayed both in detail as individual reports and in an aggregated format. Here are some of the numbers. So 158 case reports, 81 discussion posts, and nearly 750 clinical trials. And we've included 310 journal articles, 215 news articles, and 35 events. The information that we have on COVID-19 as of now is, of the 150 cases reported, more than 65 repurposed drugs have been identified, and 15 of these drugs have been used in 10 or more cases. So the current goals of the project are to get cases submitted to the CureID platform from as many healthcare providers as possible if they choose to use an approved product for an unapproved use. And this is where we really encourage all of you, as well as your colleagues and friends, to submit your cases. It's a very easy process. And if you have large numbers of cases, we would be happy to work with you directly to upload that information. This is a way for you to contribute to the global clinical community and help to identify potentially safe and effective treatments that could aid COVID patients. It provides a platform for discussion, which is really crucial during this pandemic, and particularly on a global level, to enable healthcare providers in different places and different specialties to engage with one another and to responsibly share the limited data that is available, recognizing its limitations. So the goal is to use these anecdotal reports, but captured in a systematic manner and then aggregated, to inform randomized clinical trials as rapidly as possible. And we look forward to working with DNDi, WHO, and other partners to be able to make that a reality. As I said, we're now collaborating with a number of partners officially to promote the use of CureID as a tool to collect cases on treatment of COVID-19 patients in conjunction with ongoing clinical trial efforts. And these activities are also being coordinated through our existing partnership with WHO. And healthcare providers are encouraged to share their cases. And a reminder that when necessary, please submit your cases to the relevant public health authorities as well. So, do any of you have cases to share? While we of course recommend that and encourage patients to be enrolled in a clinical trial wherever that may be possible, we recognize that it isn't always available. And so in those cases where it's not feasible, if you've used an existing drug approved for another indication to treat a patient with SARS-CoV-2, if you've used a combination of approved products, or if you have safety concerns with the use of an approved product being used in a new way, please share your cases now on CureID. Our hope is that by utilizing the CureID platform now for COVID-19 case collection, in conjunction with data gathered from other registries, EHR systems, and clinical trials, that the data collected during an outbreak can be improved and coordinated, and that this may allow us to facilitate research to find possible treatments to help ease this pandemic, as well as prepare us better to fight the next one, because sadly, there will be a next one. Now, the question always remains, how do we translate the collection of anecdotal reports to inform clinical trials and then potentially even drug labeling? And it's been our belief for a number of years that it's important to establish a consortium of stakeholders who all have a piece of this pie in this complicated process of translation of scientific findings and anecdotal reports to sort of full drug development information. And so one of the goals is to establish this consortium and then have the partners really work to identify a clear pathway forward both for generating adequate evidence from RCTs, as well as submitting that evidence to the FDA and others such as WHO for review. So with that, I'm very pleased to announce the launch of the Cure Drug Repurposing Collaboratory. As was stated before by Mary Ann, this project was initiated in 2013 and has been a labor of love that has been going on for several years and has expanded. And we are very grateful to be able to be working with the Critical Path Institute, which has announced that it will convene a public-private partnership in collaboration with FDA and NIH, which, as I said, was called the Cure Drug Repurposing Collaboratory, or CDRC. This collaboratory will begin with a pilot focused on furthering drug development for COVID-19 through use of the CureID platform and translation into clinical trials, and ultimately, hopefully, drug approvals. And the goal will be that the collaboratory will demonstrate how data shared from clinicians in real time can be used to inform ongoing and future trials, and how those trials could then potentially inform drug labeling. I encourage all of you to also get involved with the CDRC in addition to sharing your cases through the CureID platform. There are opportunities to join as an institutional partner, serve on an advisory or coordinating committee, become a CureID curator, contribute your data set to the CureID database, or participate as a CureID clinical champion to help get the word out. And you can visit the consortium's website at cpath.org/programs/CDRC, or email the address here if you're interested in getting involved. So with that, I also encourage you to participate and get in touch more broadly. Please visit the website, and if you have comments or suggestions, you can email us at the Cure support address. I'd like to thank our many partners and collaborators. This has been an effort that has required input from many, many people over the years, and we couldn't have done it without all of them. And a thank you to all of the members of the CureID team, as well as our volunteers, advisors, and funders. And here are some references if you so choose. And with that, I thank you very much.